Yeah, it's Sebastian.
Okay, guys, let's start. God willing.
Birthday today, so
Guys, everybody ready? So let's do it. You guys are ready? Awesome. We're gonna have an awesome night, Bezat Hashem. Guys, we're gonna start the parsha a little bit. Hopefully, we're gonna have a lot of interesting stuff to speak about. But honestly, these are certain things that we struggle with. Not, I mean, in our lives, but we have a question. Some questions. For example, we're going to discuss. Let's say if somebody gets money in an illegal way, steals it or some other illegal way, and then he uses it for charity, is that considered to be a mitzvah or not, right? So let's see where we learned that from, obviously. So see what we spoke about it last week. The name of the parsha of last week is Mishpatim. Mishpatim means civil laws. Over there, the Torah says how you're supposed to make your money. Has to be in a proper way. I'm saying, like it says, if you damage, you have to pay him back. If you steal, you have to pay double back. There's many, many rules. And then afterwards, this week's parasha is Parshat of Terumah, which is talking about donations. What it's talking about when the Jews were in the desert, so then they, after they made a golden calf, so God, whatever, abandoned them for a certain while. They were like punished. So then when they repented, God said, I'm going to forgive you. They wanted a sign. Give us a sign that we are forgiven. So God says, okay, the sign will be that you will make a house for me. And then I'm going to bring my presence. God's, presence will be in that house. So if you have such an intimate connection, it's a proof that I forgave you. Otherwise, God wouldn't reveal himself in that house. And that's what happens. They give their money. So this week's Parshat Terumah means giving donations, set aside money for donation, but it only comes after previous Parshat Mishpatim, which is telling us how to make kosher money. Like many, as we said, not stealing. When you lend money to somebody, if he's a Jewish person, he can't take interest. All this stuff. What is that teaching you? That before a person gives a donation, he has to look if he got the money, the money that he got, is it kosher according to the Jewish law or not? If it's according to the Mishpatim, the Jewish laws of the Torah, then the Truma, the donation, is a donation. But if let's say, God forbid, he gets it in an illegal way, it's not even a mitzvah. It's not as a lower mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah at all. It's a sin. Actually, we learned that, there's a halacha that it's called in Hebrew mitzvah haba ba'avera. For the ones that speak Hebrew, what is mitzvah haba ba'avera?
Mitzvah what?
Haba.
Abba, like
mitzvah
that came be'avera.
through
Avera. Through a
the
sin. Exactly. Imagine, I want to put on tefillin. I don't have tefillin today. So I'm going to go to the synagogue. I steal a pair of tefillin. I put it on. I did not fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. It's not a mitzvah at all. So this is what the Torah is teaching us. For a mitzvah, for charity to be charity, you got to give some money. You have to get the money in a very kosher way. So this is one of the stuff that we learned from this week's parsha. Any questions that you guys have on this, let me know. We'll go through it. Any questions? No, it was pretty simple. We're going to learn a lot of simple stuff. Next thing that we're going to learn actually is that, you see, the Torah tells us for giving donation, ve'yikhu li truma, take for me a donation. Now, do you take a donation or you give a donation?
you give.
You give, you don't take. They say joke about a rabbi that he was drowning. And somebody, I don't, it only makes sense in Persian, I think. And the guy says, here, give me your hand. I'm going to save you. The guy wasn't giving his hand. He's screaming, give me your hand. He doesn't give his hand. So there's another Persian guy, another Jewish guy there. He tells him he doesn't give anything, he only takes. So he said, okay, take my hand. Then he took his hand and took him out. But again, donations, usually you give, you don't take. So what's the word for giving in Hebrew?
like take.
No, give.
Oh, give. Like
Give me. I say give me.
like tenderly. Like
Tenderly. Exactly. So should have said ve'yitnu li truma. Give me a truma. How come it says ve'yikhu li, take for me truma? Take a donation? To me, it doesn't make sense. So you see, Mefarshim give a lot of answers. Number one is, when we give a donation, we are actually receiving a lot more than we are giving. When you give to somebody else, you're receiving a lot more. Let's bring an example that we see in the Talmud. The Talmud tells us, if you give money to a poor man, God gives you 5 blessings. So when I gave him money, I did 1 mitzvah. But I'm getting back 5. The Gemara says the verses. Now, what if I give him charity, but I give him a lot of encouraging words with it? It's not, that my head is the other way, here's $1 and go. Again, as long as I don't do it in a very, like in a way that I make it condescending way, I'm getting my 5 blessings. But imagine I just don't give it, but actually give him encouraging words. I know there is hard times. It's going to be good. God is going to bless you. Be'ezrat Hashem. We'll see you one day. Your children get married. Whatever it is, you give a lot of encouraging words. The Gemara says you get 11 blessings, another 6. So saying a kind word is more effective than actual giving money. When you give the money, you only get 5. When you say kind words, you get another 6. One more. What's the reason? Why is kind words so important? So commentators say, because when you give money and you can buy food with it, that only satisfies his hunger for 2 hours, not more. However, 3 hours, depending what he buys. If he eats matzah for 5 hours, Pesach is coming, guys. Right? Matzah keeps your stomach full for a long time. If it doesn't give you a stomachache. But then when you give an encouraging word, the encouraging words could actually change his life forever. There is such a possibility. So the effect is a lot more. I want to share a story with you. This was about a certain girl. It's a true story. You know what it is? I hope nobody should go through this. You should all get married at a young age. But it's a very uncomfortable feeling that, when you have, let's say, classmates, especially in religious community, how do you know when it's time to get married? When your classmates start getting married, then you have to start looking. If you're going to end up being the last guy from the class or last girl from the class, it's very, very hurtful. So, and I'll tell you why. There was a certain girl, it's very exciting. The first girl or the first boy in the class gets engaged. So all the classmates go to the synagogue, right? And they wish Mazal Tov. What do all the older ladies say? God willing by you, Be'ezrat Hashem by you should get married. So in the beginning is good. But then imagine if there's 10 kids in the class, 10 girls, 8 of them get married. There was only 2 left. And this girl was second to the last. Finally, the second to the last girl gets engaged too. And she's going to the synagogue. She really doesn't want to go. I mean, the last one which is left, because she's going to see all the older women, God willing by you, God willing by you, whatever. It's the way it works. And every time it was like a pain in her heart. That means I'm not married yet. It actually happened to me once. There was a certain girl that I saw in Unique Bakery. And I asked questions. Are you married yet? You said, no, Rabbi, I'm looking this and that. But this girl actually turned the other way. So what's going on? So I saw next because I said, were you upset at me? So she started screaming, yes. Why are you asking me that question? It reminds me that I'm not married. It hurts me and I really asked for mechila. So this girl was going through the same trouble. And then obviously she came to the synagogue and then another woman says, oh, you're not married yet? God willing by you. This was like a dagger in her heart again. And again, they don't mean anything bad. So then she made up in her mind, I'm not going to get married anymore. Forget it. I went out on so many dates. It never worked out. And she was supposed to go on a date that night. So I'm not going to go on a date. Forget about it. Whatever it is. So she was walking, to the chamber where they're eating after the Shabbat Chatan. So they go to make Kiddush. So while she was walking out of the synagogue, another older lady, a middle-aged lady saw her and he says, oh my gosh, you look so beautiful in this dress. You're going to be a real, real good, attractive wife and mom. I wish I would have a daughter-in-law looking like you. Something like that. So those words actually made her feel good. And I said, you know what? Yeah, maybe. This lady saying I look so beautiful and everything. So she decided to go out that night on a date. And she ended up marrying that guy. So just brought this story as a proof that encouraging words could have an effect that actually changes your life. And the opposite too. If you always put down somebody, you might make the guy so depressed that he'll never, have any goals in his life. So here, she made her mind not to go on a date anymore. Right? And then one kind word. She went out that Saturday night and she ended up getting married. So this is what so we see that kind words have a lot. So basically, when we give charity, we get 5 blessings, right? Going back to the original word. When you say kind word, you get another 6 blessings. So when you give charity, actually, you're doing one mitzvah where you get 11 blessings in return. That's what the Torah says. V'yikhuli truma, you take truma to me. Because when you give a donation to God, you actually get back a lot. You're not giving, you're taking. That's one answer given. There is a second answer that, after 120 years, the only money that we own is the money that we used in good deeds. So that's what it says. V'yikhu. What do you guys take? Truma. What's really your money? The money that we gave as a donation. Again, I'm not collecting for any money. Don't worry about it. But that's absolutely true. There was one of these huge guys that had billions of dollars. And I think it was Rothschild, if I'm not making a mistake, or Montefiore, whatever, one of these guys. He lived in Europe. So, the king called him and he said, "Tell me, how much assets do you have?" And he gave him an amount of money. And he made a calculation. He says, "Come on, is that all you have? No way. You're such a rich guy, you have more." So he says, "No, the money that I have is not mine. The only money that I have is the money that I gave to charity. And that's a calculation that I gave you." So remember, after 120 years, the only thing we take with us is only our good deeds. When it comes to money, is the mitzvah that we did with the money. That's what the Torah says. Ve'ikhu trumas. Is that clear? Awesome. So now I'm going to actually share with you a couple of stories. It's getting very simple class. I hope it's not boring. Everything's okay? Yeah. So now let's go through another thing. We're going to go through a story, people. And I want to say this because, we have many times certain people that maybe they don't have that much knowledge, but they have such pure heart that honestly the pure heart supersedes and actually is higher than, many good deeds that regular people do when they don't have such a kind heart. But let's go through this. Where do we find a hint in the Torah that actually intentions do matter? It's in this week's parsha. It says, "Ve'ikhu li truma," like take for me a donation to make the Beit HaMikdash, right? The word "li" is extra. What do you mean take for me? Give a donation. That's it. Give a donation, build a house for me. What do you mean take for me, give for me? What's the word of for me? So Rashi says the extra word for me, give it for God's sake. Give it for my name. Many times we give a donation not because we want to, but because I want to have my name on this huge wall. Donated by, let's give a name that doesn't embarrass anybody. A name that doesn't exist, Salazar. I don't know any Jewish people that the last name is Salazar, right? Just an example. Donated by the Salazar family. So they're actually giving a little bit is because, wow, they want to show that I'm proud that I gave the donation. Or sometimes somebody gives the money because he's embarrassed if he doesn't. Everyone who's a millionaire, you got to give the money. There's actually a Gemara that the Gemara says, we're getting off record for a little bit. It says Jews are holy. Some of them have money and they don't give. Some of them don't have money, but they want to give. So Rav Zusha Vanipali had a question, I don't get this. Some people that don't have money, but they really want to give, they're holy. But people that don't have money, they do have the money and they don't give, why are they holy? So he gives an answer that really the ones that they have the money and they don't give, it doesn't mean they don't give. They give, but they don't want to give. So the giving is not with a good heart, but the action is a good action. The Jews that don't have the money, but they love to give, they have the heart, but they don't have the money. So God combines them. So you have the intention of the poor man, and you have the actual giving of the rich man. So that becomes a very, very beautiful mitzvah. So through that, all the Jews are holy. The ones that do give, the ones that really want to give. Okay. So, anyways, here's what the Torah says: Li, that you have to have that pure heart. Give it for my sake. Don't give it for any other reason. So we see from here that actually intention matters. If you're building a house of God, isn't the main thing money? Just give it. What's the difference what your intention is? As long as God's house is built. No. God says, when you give the money, give it for my sake. No ulterior motive. To understand this, there was a Yehuda Leib Chasman, was a very big Rosh Yeshiva, that he brings an example to make this understood. Imagine I'm going to tell you there is a man that every morning, doesn't matter when it's cold or hot, he gets up every day in the morning and he takes a bottle of milk and he puts it in front of every house. So the children should have wholesome milk every day. Isn't this quite fantastic? Every day in the morning he wakes up, whether it's hot, whether it's cold, he makes sure there's milk in everybody's door. Right? Oh, exactly. You just did it. You just hit it on the nail. What happens if I tell you for every bottle of milk that he puts in front of the kids' houses, he gets $1 for delivery? So he's not doing a mitzvah anymore. He's a delivery man.
Yeah, so I think
That's it. He's a delivery man. He's not. So you see, again, they're doing the same job. He's just doing it because he's making money. He's a delivery man. But if he does it out of donation of his heart because he cares for the kids, then it's a mitzvah. He's no more delivery man. So here, that's what the Torah says, that when we do a mitzvah, it's talking about a donation, but it's really every mitzvah. Really, the value is a lot higher when we do it for God's sake, for no ulterior motive. Go ahead.
What if that's the reason why he became a great man? Later that, because he wanted to bring the milk to children, make sure that they all had.
Okay, and as you're saying, he just has to make a living, so he has to make a living, but he chose this because he wants to take care of the kids. Definitely, it's a very elevated mitzvah. You know what I'm saying? The question is, do I become a doctor? Do I become a doctor because I want to save lives? Or do I become a doctor because I want to make money? Well, I mean, you're going to make the money anyways because everybody has to make a living. But what was my intention when I became a doctor? So if your intention is to save life, what? Okay, I'm just saying, some people really do it for the mitzvah. You know what I'm saying? If a rabbi becomes a rabbi for the money, then we're in trouble. If he becomes a rabbi because he wants to help the community, but he has to make a living, listen. Okay, so he makes a living, the minimum, whatever it is. But he's not after the money. Anyway, we find the difference. If he's nice only to the rich people, or if he's nice to everybody. I'm not kidding. So anyways, going a little bit further, there's a story that I wanted to share with you. It's a very, very beautiful story with times of the Arizal. A little bit of a history. In old Europe, the fathers of the church, they had the power. So, they believed that you have to make everybody into a Christian. It was like really, really dark ages of Europe. Millions of lives were destroyed, especially Jewish lives. And there was, wars between the Christians and the Muslims and the Muslims and the Christians. But the Jews, most of the time, were targets. There's actually a book about it that if you guys want to know about how to fight Christianity, that they want to come and actually take Jews and convert them. They use a lot of.
Aren't those called Jehovah's Witnesses?
I don't know. They're called evangelicals. That's what they're called. Mm-hmm. Right. So those guys, honestly, they have so many tricks. They don't tell you anymore to become, believe in in the New Testament, or to become a Christian and convert. They use a lot of very freaky words. They say become a Bible believer. You could be a Jew, but he is like the leader. So Rabbi Tuvia Singer, it's a very, very good book. You could actually go on Google. It's 2 volumes, and big letters. You don't have to strain your eyes to read. But he actually puts what the tactic is, and actually tells you how to fight them back. I just got this book. It's a fantastic book. So you really know how to counteract them. But anyways, so in those days, they were meant. So what these Christians did, they would tell Jews, either you have to become a Christian, or you have to leave the country only with your clothes on, no money. But if you're not going to leave and you're going to stay here, you have to convert. Otherwise, we're going to kill you in public. So many Jews left. Many Jews that couldn't leave, they got killed. Some of the Jews, outwardly, they make themselves look like Christians, but they actually live like Jews. And these Jews were called by the Christians Marranos. Marrano, I think in Spanish, means pigs. They called them pigs because many of them only outwardly they showed themselves as Christians, but really inside they kept Judaism. Like, when Pesach came, they would go to the marketplace, buy the maror, buy the lettuce, and buy all those stuff. They would make matzahs underground. They would actually have underground synagogues that they would gather on Shabbos. Many of them got caught and they were burnt alive. But later on in the 1500s, so a lot of them had a chance to run away from Europe, and they came to Israel. So one of these Marranos came, I don't want to call them Marranos, one of these Jews actually came to the city of Tzfat, where the Arizal, the master of Kabbalah, was living there. So he came to the synagogue. The guy knows nothing. Imagine, for many years, couple generations, they don't have a yeshiva. They don't know anything about Judaism. What they know is what the parents did for them. So, like, for example, they say Pashtuns. The Pashtun people that live in Afghanistan, they have a very weird custom. Friday nights, they light a candle, but they hide it under a basket. They don't know why. So the theory is they were Jews. And the mother used to light candles, but they were afraid to get caught. So they used to hide it under a basket or something, so nobody should catch them. They say, we don't know why we do this. So imagine these, they don't know, they forgot after, if this theory is true, I don't know. So after, let's say 40, 50 years, these Jews in Spain, in France, whatever they were just keeping Judaism, whatever they saw the parents did. They have no idea what the reason is. They just kept it because they thought this is the right thing. So when they came to Israel, they were totally ignorant. So then one of these people comes to the synagogue and he hears the rabbi talking about in times of the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, Jews brought sacrifices. So if somebody was really poor, he couldn't afford to buy an animal, what did he do? He would bring, a little bit of a flour, make like a type of a cake with it, was a matzah cake, and then they used to burn a little bit of it on the altar, and the rest was given to the Kohanim, the priests used to eat it as a gift to God. And rabbi goes, this was like the greatest pleasure that God had, whatever it is. So this guy being ignorant, he says, you know what? I want to give such a gift to God. I wish I can do it. So he heard that they used to sift the flour 13 times. So it really became fine flour. So he goes and buys a bunch of flour, a lot of flour. And he goes on and he tells his wife, listen, you want to make sacrifices for God, and I want you to have this pure intention. Again, this is not a mitzvah at all. And we're going to sift it 13 times, and they together make a challah, a bread. And then they knew that you pour some wine on the altar too. And he goes to the synagogue, he puts it in the Aron Kodesh. And he's standing there praying, God, please accept my sacrifice. Now look what happens. That night, the shamash, the guy that takes care of the synagogue, opens the Aron Kodesh to put the Torah on the right place where they read it. And he says, oh my gosh, look, there is a challah, there is a wine. Thank God, God sent my food. So he took it home and he ate it with his family. Next day, this Morano, the Jew that was ignorant, comes and they open up the Aron Kodesh and he says, oh my gosh, my wine and bread is not there. What does he think? God took it. It's a true story. He was so happy. He says, my gosh, look, I had pure intentions and God accepted my sacrifice. So next week he does the same thing. He tells his wife, let's have our good intentions. Let's make this flour. Let's make this thing. And he makes the challah and wine. And he goes to the synagogue and he's praying, God, please, you accepted it last week. Please accept it this week. Same thing happens. The shamash comes and says, wow, I got food this week again. This went for months. So one day he came to the synagogue Friday afternoon, and the rabbi was sitting in the synagogue. He was preparing his lecture for the next day. And in his eyes was weird. What is this weird guy doing? God, well, he wasn't weird. We're going to soon see. So he says, what are you doing here? He says, I'm bringing a sacrifice for God. So he says, what? God doesn't take such sacrifices. What kind of nonsense is this? He was a very strict rabbi. So he says, not true. Every week I put the bread and the wine and he's not there the next day. That's a sign that God accepted it. So he says, you fool. Very, very harsh words. You think God accepted your sacrifice? Probably the shamash that fixes the Torah, he sees it and he takes it home. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to call the shamash. So he calls the shamash and he says, listen, when you do the whatever Galila, you put the Torah in the right place. What has been happening for the past few months? He says, well, what happens is I find it, I take it home, and me and my wife eat it and drink it. So this poor man was devastated. Imagine till now, for months, how much energy put into this with his wife to make the bread, to prepare the wine. And he thought every Saturday, every Shabbat, thinking, my gosh, wow, my prayers were accepted. God took it. Now he was devastated. And not only that, he was embarrassed. He said, what a fool I am. I thought God is taking my sacrifices, I'm worth nothing. So the guy went home totally brokenhearted. So right then, the Arizal, master of Kabbalah, was in a different synagogue, and he sends one of his students, call the rabbi right now. So they call the rabbi, and he tells the rabbi, I want to tell you, go write your will. Go write a will. It's Hava. Because tomorrow, after you give your lecture, you're going to die. And he says, why? He says, from the times of the temple until today, when they used to bring sacrifices, whatever pleasure, God, from the sacrifices, I'm not getting into it. I don't know it myself. But, Kabbalistic books talk about it. It says, from times of the temple till this guy, God had never had a pleasure of, getting a gift, so to speak, from somebody from times of Beit HaMikdash till this guy. And you took that pleasure away from God. So you're not going to live after tomorrow. So go write your will. And the guy did it. After he gave his lecture, he passed away. Now let's analyze this. This guy was doing no mitzvah. I'm sorry. There is no mitzvah in the Torah saying that you have a mitzvah to make challah and prepare wine and put it in the Aron Kodesh. And really, halachically, you can't even do that because Aron Kodesh has a holiness that you have to put only Sifrei Torah in there. I can't put other stuff in there. So this guy actually, not only that he wasn't doing a mitzvah, he was making a mistake. But the purity of his heart, it was so important that actually this gave pleasure to God more than anything else. Even more than the drasha, more than the speech that the rabbi used to give. So here, what the Torah says in this week's parsha, V'yikhu li truma. God says, when you give a truma, give it purely for my sake. Doesn't say just V'yikhu, give me truma, give me a donation. From here we see that actually the intentions do matter. Sometimes if somebody has a pure intention, even if it's not a mitzvah, it could cause a lot of pleasure for God. That's a great thing that you actually learn from this. I didn't go through deep stuff, very simple stuff. But first of all, none of us, should underestimate our mitzvot. And why am I telling you? There are sometimes people that we call them Bali Tshuva, they're the returnees, right? And they have this fire in their heart, more than religious people. Because imagine a guy that's if you're in the city, right? You're thirsty. Do you have a thirst for water? No, because the water is next to you. Imagine you were in the desert for 5 days. You didn't drink anything. And then suddenly you come into the city. You go crazy for a bottle of water. None of us go crazy, believe me. You walk to any Ralph's after Biden, $2 for a bottle of water. I'm just kidding. Trump time was 99 cents. So I'm just saying a joke. It doesn't matter. But again, nobody's dying for water. Anywhere you go, there is water. And you walk in a hotel, there's a fountain you could drink. But if you're in the desert for 5 days and you suddenly get into a city, you go crazy for the water. So people that were around religion all their lives, they don't have that thirst because they're in it. They have it. Imagine somebody that was completely far, and one day, boom, he hits him in his head that I want to get closer to God. So you see that I act a little bit strange many times. Like the first thing that you see is, like this Bali Tshuva, the first thing is they take this big kippah that covers the whole head. No religious guy does that. So everybody else laughs at them. But honestly, we shouldn't laugh at them. Because, what?
You see those mostly in Israel.
You're right. You see it here too in religious places. If let's say you go to Muncie, New York, you know what I'm saying? Or what you see it. So to a religious guy, this guy is a weirdo. Like, has to have the biggest kippah, or you have to have a bigger kippah than the rabbi. But again, we shouldn't make fun of them because really, if there's purity of heart in what they're doing, their mitzvah is even higher than a religious person, possibly. So never make fun of somebody. So we don't know what's in their heart. Anyways, that was what? Yeah. So this was, basically what we learned, guys. Thank you for coming. If you have any questions, please, because maybe we do like one more small thing, and we got to go to. You want to go to same place? Or you want to go across the street? Dairy or meat?
Whatever you want.
What? I don't care. I'm not going to eat. So it doesn't matter. You want meat? You want the beef?
Should we take a bowl?
No. Beef is better, right?
No, chicken or beef.
Where's the beef? I don't know what it means, but where's the beef? They always say that. Where's the beef? I don't know what it means, honestly. It's a movie or something.
No.
Where's the beef? But I hear it on the public school kids.
David just said that.
Okay, the last thing that I wanted to study, people, is, when they made one of the vessels, I'm going to call in a minute, one of the vessels that I had in the temple was the Aron. The Aron is the ark where the 2 tablets are. Now, the way they made the Aron, the Torah says you have to cover it with gold from inside and outside. So how did they make it? It was made out of wood. That was what the Aron was. Then they made a bigger one, a golden one. So they put the wood one inside it. And then they made a smaller one from gold, and they put it inside the gold. And then they put a lid to cover the top of the wood. So really, the Aron was made out of wood, but it was covered with gold inside and outside. Why does it have to be covered with gold inside and outside? So one of the commentators says, really, an Aron is a symbol of the Torah. That's where you put the 2 tablets. And according to one opinion, one of the Torahs that Moses wrote was put by the side or inside of the Aron. Now, really, every Jew is an Aron, especially every scholarly Jew, because somebody that studied the Torah carries the Torah within him. So you're a walking Aron. When you carry a Sefer Torah, you have to stand up for it. Imagine somebody's a real righteous, scholarly person. you have to stand up for him too when he walks into a synagogue. Why? Because he's a walking Sefer Torah. What's the difference? In the Sefer Torah, you have the words of the Torah. This guy lives the words of Torah. I'm saying a real righteous person, right? So each one of us actually is a Sefer Torah, walking Sefer Torah. So we have to be pure within and we have to be pure without. Some people show themselves righteous, but inside they're rotten. Sorry, that's not a Sefer Torah. Some people inside they're very good people, but they don't socialize with others. They're just, perfectionists for themselves. So this is what the Torah tells us, inside and outside, from within. And the way we act towards other people, we have to be made from pure gold. We have to be awesome people. Anyways, thank you for listening, people. Let's make a phone call.